Hi all, I have another absolutely amazing super chess game to show you. Leela ID 11089 playing against Nirvana 2.4. This is in the Chess.com Computer Championship Rapid Rumble. Time control 15 minutes each with a 5-second increment, so this is stage 1. So can Leela reach a state of Nirvana in this game against Nirvana? D4, let's see, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3. We have now, after bishop b4, the Ragozin variation. White counterpins, that's a relative pin, that's an absolute though, with a relative pin here of that knight. Knight bd7, e3, c5, c takes, e takes, queen c2. In this position, usually bishop d3 is played here, but they both can transpose into each other. For example, queen a5 to exert more pressure on c3, queen c2 here, c4. This is a near transposition to the game anyway. So queen c2, we do have queen a5, bishop d3, and now c4. So what should white do? Because this seems in a way counterintuitive to release the tension, but in the specifics of this position, black has pressure on that c3 knight and can sometimes play knight e4. White plays usually bishop f5 here. You might be wondering, what about bishop e2? It's a bit on the passive side and invites knight e4, which not only puts pressure on c3 but can snap off that bishop. So for example here, black can do both of those things with taking on c3, which fractures the pawn structure a bit, and then actually here just take the pawn on c3 is very good for black. So yeah, this is tricky. So bishop f5, it keeps the possibility of taking a pesky knight with bishop takes e4. So we have castling. Just to show that on the board, there's nothing for black here because the king's in the center. We can just take on e4 and take with check. So that's just terrible for black. So black just castled here. White castles, g6. Now it seems more usual. This does compromise a bit the dark squares. It seems more usual here is rook e8. For example, knight d2. g6 maybe now. A little bit, again, transposing into the game a bit, because if g6 has to be played eventually, or black wanted to play g6 eventually, we get a similar kind of concept here, that white is interested in trying for an e4 break at some point to try and expose these weaknesses, and the queen's kind of in Siberia at the moment over here. Black offering the c8 bishop, otherwise threatening bishop takes h3, so say this scenario with f3 to try and play for e4. This kind of position could actually lead to a very nice advantage for white with that e4 thrust, and this is reminiscent a bit of this classic iconic game, Botvinnik against Capablanca, where there was this e4 break prepared, and the dark square bishop was quite good for Botvinnik. But this kind of variation, I just want to show you some dangers here of this fantasy variation, with white playing for f4, f5. Can even take on there, and the attack is very strong here. For example, this situation is very good advantage. And it's been seen at Grandmaster level. There was at least one GM game following up to here with a win for white. But technically, queen e7 check just finishes black off with this kind of continuation. It just shreds black's king to bits. So I want to give you this flavor, like rook f5 here is mating. This is a flavor of, this e4 plan there. That kind of stuff has been seen before. So that's on rook e8. So we can actually just transpose with the same sort of plans. Basically, white's preparing to break, with e4 later. So in this game, we see though the immediate g6, bishop takes d7. You might wonder, what if the bishop retreated here? I'm not sure it's as good, because bishop takes here, knight e4, hits c3, hits the bishop here. This should be an even position. For example, like this, black can, although not winning the pawn here, can take this bishop on g5, knight f6, and it's very comfortable. For example, this position, there's nothing for black really to worry about here. yeah, there's no real build-up. There's no latent energy here. Black's doing fine there. So we have white giving up voluntarily that bishop, not retreating. The bishop can't take as a bishop takes f6, so the knight has to take. And now we have an immediate e4, which aims for this central pawn wedge. And you might wonder, that can't be allowed. A pawn wedge with e5. Black played knight b6. You might wonder why. Why not take on e4 to stop this pawn wedge? Well, knight takes e4 is good here for white. In any case, this position is quite dangerous. It's a nice initiative. For example, here knight e5, and you can see the dark squares. They're echoing. They're a bit vulnerable here. For example, here rook e6. Let's just give a fictional scenario. Queen d2 getting on dark squares. And anytime black takes, this is just very uncomfortable for black. Anytime black takes, there's a nice f6 square to use. So this is just really uncomfortable. This kind of situation where there's a build up, yeah, white's just better there. So the pawn wedge was actually permitted. So e5. And you might think a slight downside, there's bishop f5, but no, actually it nudges the queen where it wants to be on dark squares. Ideally, you know, bishop f6, queen h6 in the ideal world. But here, rook fc8, the harsh reality is there's bishop f8 though. It's not that simple. It covers these weaknesses now. There's bishop f8. As long as the bishop isn't given up, then bishop f6, queen h6 won't destroy black's king. So a3 here, and the bishop drops back. As I say, if the bishop gives itself up, then it's ripe for bishop f6. It's just going to be like mating. There'll be a pawn for one moment to support the mate, and that's it. So bishop goes back. It has to be used for defense there. We have now knight h4. This is really good stuff, knight h4. And here, after bishop d3, you might think, okay, this is going to be the end of all of white's attacking schemes. Is that because the rook is being nudged? So there's no f4, f5, right? What would you play here if I give you 5 seconds? So Leela's playing this position. f4. This is a state of Nirvana. This is ideal. Absolutely ideal, because this central pawn wedge on e5, it's really good if f5 e6 can happen, especially with a knight on h4 hitting g6 already. You can imagine takes and takes. The black king side's going to crumble. The queen's in Siberia. The knight's kind of blocking the queen. These pieces are not very relevant. So this is really a fantastic attacking position already. It would have all been kind of ruined on rook fe1. I'll give you an example. You might think this could be useful for e6. Even if that happens, this kind of scenario is nothing to write home about. Yeah, if you want to keep the queens on, well, a3 is lost anyway, potentially. So let's just imagine losing the a3 pawn. This kind of scenario is just nothing to write home about. It's an even position. Might have enough for a draw. I think that's about it. So this is a state of Nirvana against Nirvana instead, offering the exchange sacrifice. And also, there's no worries about the center, is there? Yeah, there's not even any pressure on d4 in this position. So black takes on f1. Another alternative, just to quickly check, knight a4, instead of taking on f1, just push through, just keep offering this exchange sac. And say this is just continually ignored, then we can just use the rook with rook f3. This is a fictional scenario, just to give you a flavour. So, okay, that hits the knight, but then we get the pawn. Okay, this position is just really uncomfortable, because I'll give you a scenario where black tries to sort of use the advanced pawns here. It just ends in tears for black. This position after h4, it ends in tears. The pawn basically is a winner here. Bang. Rook takes g6. This is a fictional scenario. King f2 with rook h1 coming, and that's the end of black's king. For example, like this, checkmate. So these scenarios where the bishop doesn't want to take and knight a4 are dangerous. So the bishop did take, rook takes, and we're ready to roll again, literally ready to roll with f5 and e6. And if needed, bishop f6, if that bishop ever goes away. It's just a wonderful attacking position. Knight a4, f5, beautiful attacking chess. Couldn't ask for more with the white pieces. Rook c7. If knight takes c3, b takes, this position with e6 is crushing. For example, here you can see that knight's very useful. For example, here it's give you another scenario where e6 is attacked there, and white, the king's just too bare. Doesn't bear thinking about. The king's too bare. The rook's going to be lost basically tactically, for example, if nothing else, and the knight even holds d4 there. So yeah, we have actually rook c7 being played. Just also to give you more flavors of the position, let's say a token move this to show e6 again here. Queen e3 might actually be the strongest. This is a really neat line. Here, bishop, knight, queen and rook have a party off the check and rook f3, and then check, check, and then checkmate. Yeah, it just shows some of the dangers of the position. So rook c7 is played, bishop h6, knight takes e3, and you will note this pin. White doesn't have to be in a hurry to take because that knight's immobilized. Now really what white wants to do is have the queen on h6, I say after taking, and then a knight on g5 with f6. That would be the ideal scenario without any queen f8, and also the option of mating either on g7 or h7. That's an ideal scenario. And if black took on h6, it's sort of heading for that ideal pretty quickly actually. f6 here, there's nothing to do about the mates, the form pawn mates here. This is just token mates. So the ideal scenario needs to be avoided at all costs. You know, f6, queen h6, knight g5 configuration. So we have knight takes, but now bishop takes f8. So the knight's immobilized. And black took rook takes f8. I mean, it would actually be poxy, I think, to take not to take on f8. If b takes, black can actually take on here and play this with the option of queen f8. So f6, there's queen f8, and this doesn't work. Black actually has a small edge. So the queen can take the place of the defensive bishop there. Okay, so bishop takes f8 is really super strong move. Rook takes. If king takes, then it's nasty, as you might imagine, because of knight takes g6 check here. And even this situation, this pin can be just left for torture and just attack over here now. That's desperate. But otherwise, this position, forget about the knight even, just rook f4. The rook, knight and queen are having a party now. Black can try and fend it off with knight e2 check, but the king's just too compromised here. This situation, for example, the king's too compromised, rook h8 coming. So it doesn't bear thinking about king takes f8. So rook takes f8. f6, so we're getting the ideal scenario. We want a queen on h6 and the knight on g5. We have king h8. Now we can't do this scenario here. It's too slow. White plays knight f3. We can't plunge in with the queen rather, because rook g8, knight f3, there's an annoying knight e4 just in time. There's no knight g5 now that can be taken as an example. There might also be another maybe not as good g5 actually defensive trick, because then maybe black would have to sack the exchange, and still faced with that it's not as good clearly, but knight e4 is sufficient now. So care has to be taken not to relieve this pin, just head towards the ideal scenario gradually. So maybe take here first, queen h6 and knight g5. Now we have knight e2 desperate, so let's see why black gives up the knight there to get out of the, to stop it being pinned. If b5, actually here we can play this because we're hitting the rook on f8 with tempo. So there's no knight e4 here because the queen takes. And if there's no knight e4 there, then this position is very different. Knight g5, we're threatening mate on h7, there's no defense. So, okay, so after knight f3, black played knight e2 check. Now this position, we've got the form pawn. Is the form pawn really winning here? I would say so. After h6, queen f2, the queen's coming in for the kill here. What is black doing? c3, queen h4, h5. And now it's important to take this pawn off, actually, because c takes b could be a nuisance pawn. So it is actually important. You can't just plunge in there with queen f4, queen g5. It is important to take this pawn off. You might think, well, do we really have to? Yes, you do. One has to do the chores, yeah, around the house. If queen f4, this position, we know we've got to take here, because otherwise there's nothing. Because if we do this, then there's c takes, and this is really getting annoying, this pawn. And black actually ends up being better. White, so this happens. In fact, black can avoid any draw here. Although queen h6 looks scary, we have queen b6. Hitting f6. So in queen h6, there's queen f6. There's nothing. Yeah, so it's a chore, but yeah, it's a necessary thing to do here. B takes. We have queen takes, queen f4 now. King h7. And now either e6 or knight g5 are both super strong moves. Leela chose e6. You can see in my pinned comment that the detailed PGN with indented variations. You know, knight g5 is also very strong here with e6. They transpose, but this is the basic idea. Now, black is in severe. Well, black's lost basically here. It's a lost position. Black played actually here. If f takes, then check. And then f7 threatens actually queen f6 checkmate. You see that the knight's holding h7. So say b5, queen f6, just to put that on the board, is checkmate. So black would be in dire straits. So would have to like take that off, do something desperate. It's lost. So anyway, rook cc8 is played, and now we have e7. So not just a form pawn, but even more an advanced pawn on e7 here. Black didn't even bother moving the rook. It's that bad. Didn't even bother. If black moves the rook, then knight e5, weakness of the last move, f7's hanging. So if we take on f7, it's just peeling black's king to death. I mean, queen h5, queen g7 as well is supported. I mean, queen h6 is supported by the knight. So that's just, it's just terminal. So in fact, black just gave up, basically. And white can take the rook probably, but this is probably even stronger, just going for the king g4. So we have queen d3, knight g5 check here, and now actually Leela under promoted to a knight. I have to press cancel on this interface here. A knight. Leela's trolling, under promoting to a knight. Yes, and actually the funny thing is, black ignored that knight, just left the knight on the board. And the knight stumbled back. Now, okay, maybe a question is, could this have just been promoted to a queen? The answer is yes, funny enough, because white's a knight up here. These pawns are quite some distance away from queening, because black's king is getting mated in the process. For example, here, king h1, with the idea of knight f3, rook g1, is fairly strong. Knight f3 stops any queen e4 check as well on its retreat, and then rook g1. Yeah, the pawn's not quite fast enough with the other one. So anyway, we have this under promotion of a knight, a6. The knight comes back. This is quite amusing. Yeah, you don't often see an under promotion of a knight and the knight coming back to the centre, just calmly coming back, centralising, and joining the fellow knight to attack f7 now, which would support queen h6. Well, in some knights. Pardon me, queen c7, knight g takes f7, and now queen f2 check. Yeah, it's different rules to TCEC. These are playing to the death under these tournament rules, which makes it a bit more entertaining actually to see the mate being staved off. If a5, well, sometimes it makes it more entertaining. So queen h6 here, and then it will have to be desperate time here. So yeah, we see. In the game, we see queen f2 check, and the end is near, check, and then checkmate. So I don't know about you, but I was put in a state of nirvana when the rook didn't move. No worries about the centre, pieces in Siberia, not even a bit of pressure on d4 to worry about. Once the form pawn is there, less worries. The form pawn's even spotting an e7 pawn, even less worries. It was a beautiful, beautiful game, in my view. I hope you do find that too. Comments, questions, likes, shares, appreciated. Thanks so much.